There is a particular kind of suffering that the Sophia empath knows better than almost any other. It is not the suffering of lovelessness. She has known love. She has felt it move through her with a completeness that most people spend their entire lives searching for and never quite locate. It is not the suffering of incapacity. She is, by every measure that actually matters, more capable of genuine love than almost anyone in her relational world. It is not even the suffering of being misunderstood, though she has known that too, in the specific and recurring way of someone whose depth consistently exceeds the containers the ordinary world offers for it. The suffering she knows most intimately is the suffering of forcing. The subtle, sophisticated, spiritually dressed forcing of a woman who has decided somewhere beneath the level of conscious acknowledgement, in the quiet architecture of her deepest assumptions, that ancient love is something she must locate and secure through the quality and persistence of her own effort. That, if she understands enough, prepares enough, waits in exactly the right way, holds the right interior conditions with sufficient precision and patience, love of the quality her soul requires will finally arrive and finally stay. Jung would recognize this suffering immediately, not as a failure of faith or a deficit of worthiness, as the specific and identifiable signature of a psyche that has not yet learned to distinguish between the ego's project and the self's movement, between what the conscious mind decides must happen and what the deeper, organizing intelligence of the psyche. The intelligence Jung spent his entire career trying to describe with precision is actually attempting to do, and he would say something that the Sophia empath, in all her sophistication, may not yet have fully heard. You cannot force what is meant to find you, and the trying, the beautiful, exhausting, increasingly refined trying, is the primary thing standing between you and it. Before we go further into what Jung actually means by this, we need to be honest about what forcing looks like in the Sophia empath, because it does not look like desperation. It does not look like neediness or clinginess or the obvious forms of romantic pursuit that the self-help world has already named and warned against. In the Sophia empath, forcing has been refined to such a degree of subtlety that it has become nearly invisible to the people around her, and most critically invisible to herself. Forcing, for the Sophia empath, looks like this. It looks like spiritual preparation that never quite ends, the inner work that is always just one more layer from complete, the readiness that is always being refined toward a higher standard. The specific way she has learned to hold the space for ancient love, carefully, intentionally, with a precision that is itself a form of control, dressed in the language of receptivity. She is not chasing love. She would never chase. She is preparing for it. She is cultivating the conditions for it. She is becoming, through sustained and serious effort, the woman who is capable of receiving it. And all of this is real. All of this represents genuine work and genuine development. But underneath it, if she is willing to look with complete honesty, is the ego's fundamental refusal to surrender the project. To admit that the love her soul is built for cannot be manufactured through preparation, however sophisticated. To release, genuinely, and without the performance of release, the outcome she has decided must arrive. Jung called the part of the psyche that manages this kind of effortful spiritual project the ego, the center of consciousness, the part that plans and prepares and decides and pursues, even when it has dressed its pursuit in the language of patience and trust. The ego is not the enemy. It is a necessary and valuable structure. But it has a fundamental limitation that Jung returned to again and again throughout his career. It cannot access the depth from which genuine transformation arises. It can only work at the level of what it already knows. And what the ego knows, by definition, is limited to what has already entered consciousness, to the patterns and frameworks and self-understandings that the person has already developed. It cannot reach the thing that has not yet arrived. It cannot engineer the encounter that has not yet been imagined. The self can. Jung's concept of the self, distinguished always from the ego, always written with a capital S, is one of the most demanding and most misunderstood ideas in all of depth psychology. It is not the self of popular self-development culture. It is not the authentic self of the wellness industry, the true self of affirmation culture, the higher self of New Age spirituality. It is something more precise and more demanding than any of those. It is the totality of the psyche, conscious and unconscious, known and unknown, developed and still developing, organized around a deeper intelligence than the ego can access or direct. It is the part of the psyche that knows what the ego does not yet know about what the person needs and where the person is going. It communicates not through the ego's language of planning and preparation, but through symbol, through dream, through synchronicity, through the specific quality of aliveness that attends certain encounters and certain moments that the ego did not engineer and cannot quite explain. Jung spent his life paying attention to these communications. He called it listening to the unconscious. And what he consistently found across decades of clinical work and his own personal descent into the depths of his own psyche was that the self has a trajectory. It is moving the individual towards something, not randomly, not arbitrarily, with a specificity and an intelligence that the ego, for all its sophistication, cannot replicate. And here is what this means for the Sophia empath, who is waiting and preparing and holding the space for ancient love. The self is already moving her toward it. It has been moving her toward it for longer than she has been consciously working toward it. Every experience she has had, including and perhaps especially the ones that seem to be failures, wrong turns, devastating losses, relationships that showed her what ancient love is not, has been part of the self's movement toward what she is actually built for. The individuation process, which is the self's project rather than the ego's, does not waste experience. It uses everything. It takes the wound and makes it a map. It takes the wrong relationship and extracts from it the precise education needed for the right one. It takes the years of waiting and uses them not just as preparation, but as the specific and irreplaceable path by which this particular soul arrives at the readiness that is genuine rather than performed. The ego cannot see this from inside it. It can only see the timeline, the years that have passed, the love that has not yet arrived, the gap between what she desires and what she currently has. The ego experiences this gap as a problem to be solved through effort. The self experiences it as a process that is unfolding on a timeline the ego does not have access to and cannot accelerate through greater sophistication of effort. This is what it means, in the deepest Jungian sense, to let God guide you. Jung was not a conventionally religious man, and he would be the first to resist the reduction of this principle to any particular theological framework. But he was a deeply spiritual one, in the specific sense that he took seriously the existence of a reality larger than what the ego could encompass. He spent decades studying the religious and mythological traditions of the world, not as belief systems to be adopted or rejected, but as attempts across cultures and centuries to describe and honor the same fundamental psychological reality. The reality of something in the human being that is larger than the human being's conscious understanding of themselves. Something that has purposes the ego cannot fully know. Something that moves, slowly and with patience and with a precision that only becomes visible in retrospect toward an integration that the ego alone could never have imagined. When Jung talked about surrendering to this deeper intelligence, and he returned to this theme throughout his work, most explicitly in his late writings and in the Red Book, the record of his own descent into the unconscious, he did not mean passivity. He did not mean the abandonment of effort or the cessation of inner work, or the comfortable resignation of a person who has decided that whatever happens is meant to happen. He meant something far more active and far more demanding than any of that. He meant the specific act of ego surrender that is required when the ego has taken the person as far as ego effort can take them, and the next step requires the release of the ego's grip on the outcome. The willingness to say, not as a performance of spiritual sophistication, but as a genuine and somewhat frightening act of trust, I have done what I can do. I do not know what comes next, and I am willing to not know. That willingness, that genuine, unperformed, somewhat exposed willingness to release the project is what creates the interior conditions for the self to move. Not because the self was waiting for permission, it was already moving, but because the ego's grip on the outcome had been creating, at the psychic level, exactly the kind of resistance that prevents the encounter the ego most desires from landing. Marie-Louise von Franz understood this dynamic with the precision of someone who had spent decades working at the intersection of the unconscious and the relational life. She observed that the woman who forces love, however subtly, however spiritually the forcing is dressed, communicates something at the unconscious level that the people around her receive without being able to name. A quality of agenda beneath the openness, a need beneath the patience, a grip beneath the receptivity. And the very people who carry the quality of love she is seeking, the people developed enough, conscious enough, depth possessing enough to recognize what she is, tend to be precisely the people most sensitive to this quality of unconscious pressure. Not because they are rejecting her, because their own unconscious, with its own highly developed capacity for reading the interior of another, is responding to what is actually present rather than what is being presented. When she releases the project genuinely, not as a technique for attracting love through the performance of non-attachment, but as an actual surrender of the outcome to something larger than her ego's management of it, something changes in what she radiates at the unconscious level. The quality of agenda lifts. The grip beneath the receptivity releases, and what becomes available in its place is something the ego could never manufacture, however sophisticated its efforts. A quality of genuine openness that is unmistakable to precisely the kind of person she has been waiting for. This is not the law of attraction dressed in Jungian language. This is a psychological observation about what actually happens in the unconscious field between people when one person stops managing the outcome of an encounter and simply arrives in it as they actually are. James Hillman extended this insight in a direction that is worth sitting with carefully. He argued that the soul has its own timing, that the events of greatest significance in a person's life, the encounters that genuinely shift the trajectory, the loves that leave the person permanently changed, the meetings that feel, from the inside, like recognition rather than introduction, tend to arrive not on the schedule the ego constructed, but on the schedule the soul was always following. And that the ego's insistence on its own timeline, however understandable, however human, creates a particular kind of suffering that is not just the suffering of not yet having what one desires. It is the suffering of being structurally misaligned with the actual movement of one's own deeper life. The ego wants ancient love by a particular time, in a particular form, through a particular sequence of events it has already imagined. The soul is moving toward it through a path the ego has not imagined and cannot map in advance. And the gap between the ego's timeline and the soul's actual path, that gap is where the Sophia empath lives in her most difficult seasons, not because she is doing something wrong, because she is applying the ego's tools to a project that can only be completed by the self. What does it actually look like, in practice, to stop forcing and let the deeper intelligence move? It does not look like stopping the inner work. The inner work is real and necessary, and the self uses it. It does not look like abandoning standards or lowering the threshold of what she is willing to receive. The Sophia Empaths standards are not the problem. They are, in fact, one of the clearest expressions of what the self is, moving her toward a love of sufficient depth and consciousness to actually meet her. Lowering those standards would be a regression, not a release. It looks, first of all, like a change in the interior relationship to time. The ego experiences time as running out. As the distance between now and the arrival of what is desired, either shortening or lengthening with every passing season, the self experiences time as the medium in which the work is being done, neither running out nor being wasted, but being used in ways the ego cannot always track, for the preparation that has to happen before the encounter can occur at the depth it needs to occur at. The first practical move Jung's work points toward is the cultivation of a genuine rather than performed relationship to this distinction, not the affirmation that everything happens in divine timing. The actual, somewhat uncomfortable, interior work of noticing when the ego's timeline anxiety is operating and choosing, again and again, to return to the self's relationship to time rather than the ego's. It looks, second, like a willingness to be surprised. The ego's project requires that ancient love arrive in a form the ego can recognize. It has, through years of inner work and refinement, and the cultivation of very specific understanding about what the soul requires, developed an increasingly detailed picture of what the encounter will look like, what the person will carry, what the recognition will feel like from the inside. This picture is not entirely wrong, but it is the ego's picture, and the self, in Jung's experience, almost never delivers the transformative encounter in the form the ego predicted. It arrives sideways. It arrives in a form that the ego's categories initially misread or undervalue or fail to recognize as what it is. The Sophia empath, who has been deeply educated in the language of depth psychology and the specific qualities of ancient love, may, paradoxically, be more susceptible to this misrecognition than someone less sophisticated, because the more refined the ego's picture of what is coming, the more likely it is to miss the actual arrival in favor of waiting for the imagined one. It looks, third, like genuine engagement with the life that is present rather than the life that is anticipated. This is perhaps the most demanding practical implication of the entire Jungian framework on this question, and it is also the one most consistently underestimated by the Sophia empath in her waiting. The self does not deliver ancient love into a vacuum. It delivers it into a life, a specific, particular, fully inhabited life with its actual friendships and its actual work and its actual ordinary dailiness and its actual present tense engagements with the world as it is, rather than as it will be when the love arrives. And the woman who has been holding herself slightly apart from her actual life, slightly in suspension, slightly in the waiting room of her real existence, slightly, not quite fully arrived in the present, because the present is not yet. The life she is waiting to begin is not creating the conditions for ancient love's arrival. She is creating the conditions for its continued absence. Jung observed, with a consistency that is worth taking seriously, that the deepest relational encounters in a person's life tend to arrive when the person is most fully inhabiting their actual present existence. Not when they are most prepared for love to arrive, when they are most genuinely alive in the life they already have. The full presence to the present is not a technique for attracting what is coming. It is, in the Jungian framework, the natural expression of a psyche that has released its grip on the future and allowed itself to live in the actual rather than the anticipated. And it is in that release, in the specific quality of full presence to the actual life, that the self has the room to move the encounter into place. Clarissa Pinkola Estes named something about this that carries the specific quality of truth that only the wild nature can speak. She said that the soulmate, the one who arrives with the full weight of genuine recognition, does not find a woman who is waiting for him. He finds a woman who is running her own race, who is so fully engaged in the life her soul has called her to that she is not listening for his footsteps because she is too busy making her own, who has learned, through the genuine rather than performed surrender of the forcing project, to trust that the encounter belongs to the self's movement and not the ego's management. And that trust, not as a belief system, but as a lived reality, in the body, in the daily choices, in the full inhabiting of the actual present life, is what makes her findable. Not visible in the way the ego imagines visibility, findable in the way the soul knows how to find what it is moving toward. This brings us to the theological dimension that the title of this script raises directly. What does it mean to let God guide you in the context of Jung's psychology and the Sophia tradition? Jung spent years wrestling with the question of God, not as a theologian or a believer in the conventional sense, but as a psychologist who kept encountering, in the depths of the unconscious, something that exceeded his ability to explain through purely psychological categories. He called it the God image, the psychic reality that functions in the human unconscious, the way the concept of God functions in religious experience. Not a statement about God's objective existence, which he believed was beyond the reach of psychological science, but a statement about the undeniable presence in the depths of every human psyche he ever studied, of something larger than the ego, something that had purposes the ego could not always comprehend, something that moved the individual toward experiences and encounters and transformations that the ego, left to its own devices, would never have chosen or predicted. The Sophia tradition names this something as the feminine wisdom principle, the deep knowing that operates beneath the level of rational calculation, that feels its way toward what is true rather than thinking its way there, that recognizes ancient love not through the ego's checklist, but through the body's immediate, pre-reflective, fully trustworthy knowing that something real is present. Sophia does not force, she discerns. And her discernment is not the ego's refinement of its picture of what it is looking for. It is the self's recognition of what is actually there. To let God guide you, in the language that combines Jung's psychology with the Sophia tradition, is to let the self's movement take precedence over the ego's project. To release the timeline, to stop refining the picture, to inhabit the actual life with full presence, to trust, not as a performance of trust, but as the genuine interior decision to release the outcome to the deeper intelligence that is already moving toward it. That what the soul requires will arrive when the conditions are genuinely right, not when the ego's preparation has reached a sufficient standard of sophistication. It is the most demanding thing Jung's work ever asks of any person, because it requires the ego which has been doing real work, which has genuinely developed through its years of preparation, which has every right to believe that its effort has been meaningful, to recognize its own limit, to arrive at the threshold where effort ends and surrender begins, and choose, with full awareness of what it is choosing, to step across it. The Sophia empath, who arrives at this threshold, who has done the work, who has mapped the interior, who has named the complex and met the shadow and cultivated the faithful witness and developed the capacity for genuine depth that her soul required, is not being asked to abandon what she has built. She is being asked to stop using it as a substitute for the thing it was always building toward. The inner work was never the destination. It was always the preparation for the moment when the preparation ends and the life begins. The fully present, fully inhabited, fully surrendered to the self's movement life that the ego's project, for all its genuine value, has been quietly postponing. Let God guide you does not mean wait more patiently. It does not mean prepare more thoroughly. It does not mean trust the process while continuing to manage the outcome. It means release the outcome entirely. To the intelligence that built you for this love before you knew you were being built. To the self that has been moving you toward it through every experience you have had, including the ones that felt like movement away from it. To the deeper wisdom of the Sophia tradition that has always known and encoded in every myth of descent and return, in every alchemical image of dissolution and reformation, in every story of the soul that goes into the darkness and finds there not what it expected, but what it actually needed, that the love, which is genuinely ancient, does not arrive because it was forced into place. It arrives because the woman it is moving toward has finally, genuinely, with full awareness of what she is releasing, stopped standing in its way. Not through passivity, through the most active and demanding choice in the entire Jungian framework. The choice to trust the self more than the ego. The choice to let the deeper intelligence, the one that knows the full terrain, that can see the whole arc, that has been patient, with a patience that does not require the outcome to arrive on schedule, because it knows the schedule it is keeping, guide the next movement rather than the ego's increasingly refined and increasingly exhausted project of engineering the arrival. Ancient love is not lost. It is not late. It is not being withheld by the universe as punishment for insufficient preparation or insufficient worthiness or insufficient patience. It is moving. The self is moving it and moving her toward it simultaneously on a timeline that the ego cannot see from inside the preparation it has been managing. The only thing required, the single, specific, genuinely difficult thing that Jung's entire framework ultimately points toward for the Sophia empath who has done the work and is still waiting, is to stop requiring that she can see the timeline before she releases her grip on it. To let what is larger than her ego move what is larger than her ego's project. To let God guide, not as a surrender of agency, as the highest possible expression of it, the agency of a woman who has developed enough genuine depth to know the difference between what she can do and what only the self can do, and who has, finally, with full awareness and full trust, chosen to let each do what it is built for. The ego built the fortress. The self will open the gate. Not when the preparation is complete, when the woman inside the fortress trusts, for the first time without reservation, that the gate was never hers to keep,